So today we are going to do a rundown of the very nice Dev Diary number 69, the Game Jam Part 1. And so what it seems to be is that the Game Jam is kind of a thing that devs, or I think it's just devs, where they work on various projects and kind of experiments that they might put in the game, they might not. And so this is kind of what they're doing post patch 1.1, and to move things along, I guess, as a kind of project thing to do in the interim. And I think it's a good idea because there's like a lot of like mods on the thing that already are like trying to implement stuff that would improve the game a lot. Okay. We know from experience that some of the best features and aspects of our games come from passionate developers acting on their own initiative to see what they want to put in the game. So this is the fundamental idea. After a patch releases, they're just give them some time to work on some stuff. Sometimes this is a high impact tweak to some UI element. Other times this is a new game trend like new events, buildings, or some under the hood improvement for the game. For the Game Jam, we challenge devs to join up into a cross-disciplinary teams. That's interesting that they're in teams and they're cross-disciplinary. I think this is generally a good idea because in a lot of ways, like operating from multiple perspectives can allow you to, come up with insights that you wouldn't normally come up with yourself. Just as kind of outside the purview of this YouTube channel, though, having an in-depth discussion about this sort of thing. Okay, and make the coolest feature they could think of within a week's time with prizes to the team. I love that they're giving them prizes that can make the highest impact on the game. Here are some of the ideas they came up with. Please note, only a few of these features will be included in 1.2, so this is more of a, like, kind of exploratory exercise than, like, an actual development exercise, and there are no guarantees any of them will ever make it in the game or future expansions. Some are cool prototypes that would take too much work to implement, while others may need a lot of some more supported code or content to work as a standalone feature. Consider this a peek behind the curtain, blah blah blah. Alright, first up we have Team War Never Changes, with a set experimental enhancements to the military system. Okay, so they kind of went in and they tried out two things, okay? They kind of complained about a few things. Combats on each front have a 20% chance of suffering 15% casualties from attrition a week, an average of 2% casualties from attrition alone. So this is quite a large effect. I find that in games, generally, economy is the biggest driver of anything, and if you have the best way to win wars is just to have a military that's just way, way, way stronger, such that you really don't care about this 2% attrition. But if you're trying to min-max and this sort of thing, this does seem like a lot of attrition to eat. However, if you're familiar with warfare back in the day, or back in this time, it really was like dysentery simulator, and so a lot of people just died from having bad water, and it was logistically difficult to supply people with what they needed in areas that were not cities. And so perhaps this is a departure from realism just for the sake of balance and like game comfort, because like it really sucks to have just a bunch of troops dying on a front. Another thing is, before they changed the morale in patch 1.1, and I think even to some degree after this, it's probably even better to keep some of your battalions at home, with the understanding that you're just going to avoid eating the casualties if you keep some of them at home, and then you like cycle them. I guess would be the most min-maxy way to do it. I also really think in PvP landing is particularly strong, although I haven't played PvP, but this is just my guess, because against the AI, late game wars, you just land them to open up new pockets, and when there's no one on the front to defend, which the AI sends all their guys to the other fronts, you just take a whole bunch of dirt very, very quickly and easily. So this is something to consider. Alright. And maybe it's just a matter of, having conscription centers have good PMs as well, and just not conscript and just leave them there and they defend. Okay, on the actual implementation side of things, so that's, we're done with complaint, having simultaneous battles on a front, I kind of like this idea. I really hate that, I can have like 10 generals there and only one general will fight at once. As a game jam hack, I just made it so that when battle advancement progress reaches 100, we spawn up to 2 battles in different states, as long as you have 2 advancing generals. And I suppose the front is 2 states long, right? This is a bit funny and chaotic, but it turns out it might introduce issues that affect the rhythm of the war, and also gives the advancing side some advantage. If they won one of those battles, they capture a bunch of provinces. If the defending side wins one of those, well, they just won't lose a bunch of provinces. I'm not sure, this is, I think, a poorly written sentence, because to me it's unclear, but I think the idea is, if you're playing the defending side, you kind of have to win both battles in order to get what you want, whereas the offensive side only has to win one to get what they want. And so this makes it so that, let's say you're evenly matched, instead of 50% of the time it's good for you as the defender, it's now 25% of the time it's good for you as the defender, just because if it's 50-50 for each battle, this is kind of the outcome. I don't know, perhaps battle should favor the offensive. I don't really know. You could also make it so that you get status quo, or you get like momentum, like 1 unit of momentum per battle, and you need per victory, and you need 2 units of momentum in order to advance the front or to trigger a frontal advance, and something like this, where it's like you'll get 1 unit of momentum for each battle you win. Maybe something like this. And so if you're advancing and you advance once and you tie up once, then you get 1 unit, and then the next battle tick you advance once and you status quo once, so you end up advancing the front after the second win. But if you win both battles, you just immediately advance the front. Something like this. I don't know. Just a thought in terms of making that work. I certainly think it's something you could do. It's actually pretty frustrating to watch yourself have like infinite battalions on one front and only one can fight at a time. This does not this does not at all really feel like it comports with reality in terms of how a battle would work. But okay. We've also added the ability of locking provinces to captures to the same state as the battle province, which again, as fun as it looks, more like a well-planned military invasion, but currently has the effect of capturing the whole states most of the time. Which again, is as fun as it looks, more like a well-planned... Which is fun, as it looks like a more well-planned military invasion, but currently that sentence made me stumble a couple times. But has the effect of capturing whole states. Okay, I guess this is a problem. It makes sense. All in all, I appreciate how the Game Jam opportunity gave us blah blah blah. Just being grateful and this sort of thing. Okay, so this is the next group. Combat definitely needs overhaul, but it needs like a huge overhaul. There's like... Combat's not the crowning jewel of this game. Okay. Hello, my name is Nick, and I'm the second half of this Game Jam experiment. As stated above, I am the designer on the team. Blah blah blah. Let's see, quality of life could be added. So they want to communicate information to the player better, reduce some of the pain points that frustrate the player, war exhaustion, checking attrition, equipment modifiers, general troops, and selected for... Okay, so just making it more transparent, kind of the warfare stuff, which makes sense because right now it's pretty opaque. You gotta click through some stuff, look through some stuff, and it's like a little bit of a pain. As stated above, one of the primary goals was to experiment with the idea of multiple battles. I personally wanted to... Oh, so maybe they're part of the same team. I personally wanted to experiment with the idea that the length of the front would determine the amount of battles taking place across it. This, to me, makes a lot of sense. It's not that I think every battle, like... So if you have 10 generals on a front that's, like, wide, I'm pretty okay with it only, like, one battle fighting at a time, but if you have, like, this enormous front that stretches, like, across the entire length of China, then the idea that only one battle can be fought on it at a time is, like, insane. And the battles should be spread out, and only one take place per state, perfect, to attempt to avoid player frustration of battles potentially canceling each other out. Okay, fair enough. Another goal was attempt to increase the information the player could easily see. Great. First goal, generally speaking, the information in Victoria 3 just feels kind of opaque. The first goal was to include the advancement bar on the opposing side to the front tab so it can be seen there as well. That makes sense. Additionally, I wanted to include more player... Additionally, I wanted the player to have more information on the battle screen. For this, we added a demoralized count for units. This is fantastic. We noticed that it might be confusing for the player to see that they started the battle with only 15k troops to see that they've lost the battle, but only showed that 3k died and 6k were wounded, but at the end of the battle it shows you have 0 troops remaining. Yeah, that is a bit confusing. So it shows which ones got demoralized, presumably left, abandoned ship, or ranks, or whatever. I wanted to take a look at taking war exhaustion, as I felt like losing one province could sometimes have a massive impact on the effect of your war exhaustion. This is very, very, very true. Playing Great Xing in the Opium Wars, if like they land Beijing, you just like start instantly like decaying a ton of war score, and you have to like boot them off immediately. Um, which okay, Beijing's the capital state, so it makes sense. I really wish you could just move all of your troops to the capital state, to defend against a landing or something like this. But you can only when you have your guys mobilized, you can't send them to different HQs, to defend against a naval landing. You can only keep them where they're at, which is perhaps something they should change, but I don't think it matters much in PvE, and I don't think they should be trying to game balance PvE, or sorry, PvP that much. But okay, something to think about. You can just look to build most of your guys in the capital HQ or whatever, and just keep some of them at home, I suppose. But for focusing on lowering values of the number while increasing the impact of loss of men has on a country's war exhaustion, I think this is fine. You know, the name of the game just seems entirely capturing war goals, not just running an absolute train through their troops. So this makes sense. Equipment adjustment modifier can be irritating times, and added to prevent people from just turning on their army on and off again without penalties. I agree that the equipment adjustment modifier should be a thing. I have now made it so that the penalty is worse for the primary PM, but all other PMs will now have a smaller one that will affect your whole army as a whole, but it should not inflict as much pain as before when switching. This is interesting. So the primary PM, so like going from line infantry to skirmish infantry to like tanks to trench infantry, all this will have a larger effect, and then the other ones will have a smaller effect. This is interesting and would encourage you to build small arms, and then you could switch. Like right now, what I really hate is like you can't switch on like field hospitals or something like that, which seems like you should be able to switch. I also think whatever scouts are using should be difficult to switch, like going from bicycles to planes. But like I think that the penalty should only apply, in the range of like what you're doing, not to the army as a whole. So, like, for example, a huge portion of the army's stats come from the first PM, and so that one should affect a lot of things. But like the what type of scouts you're using, I think changing that should not affect all of the base level stuff, but should only affect the numbers that are affected by the scout PM itself. Maybe something like this. I think that's how it works right now. Is if you change the scout PM, it just tanks the entire unit for like all their attributes. Okay, another area I wanted to prove, which generals and troops were selected for certain battles. Often inferior allied troops, yeah, this is really annoying, and their generals would take the battle and tie the front down. There are now additional checks to increase the chances of a general being picked based on his traits, as well as the PMs of the troops under his command. Fantastic. Team made. Okay, so now this is the next group. The team made changes to various aspects of warfare will. The changes this team made to various aspects of warfare will likely be available in 1.2, with multiple battles limited to single states turned off by default. If you'd like to experiment with multiple battles and or state-limited battles, you'll easily be able to change some defines in the script files to do so, or download a mod that does it for you. Fair enough. In the interim, we will use the team's best work to... Yeah, I'd rather have like something shipped and like not be broken and just be a slight change than to be like an optimal change. In the interim, we will see the team's work and attempt to balance multiple battles per front to see if we can make it a viable feature for the future without accidentally introducing game-destroying metas like whoever has the most generals wins. Fair. Very fair. Next up, the team Cookie Clicker consisted of VFX artist Sean. He added additional mods which change when you interact with the train. So if you notice, the clicking is causing splashing. I think this is kind of a nothing burger, but if you like this sort of thing, okay. Hello everyone, Paul here. Paul's the resident economist. To talk about the project, I was working on a Victoria 3 feature game jam. The project was titled Breaking Ground because it's both related to resources and is an explanatory prototype of what could be done in the future. I took the discoverable, depletable resource system that we could utilize for resources such as oil, rubber, gold, and attempted to apply them to logging, mining, fishing, and otherwise normally capped resources in the game. Forestry is by far the most fleshed out prototypes I built this week, and we will talk about that one. Currently, what I found in all of my runs is I just run out of wood, and what this guy is about to talk about is not helpful on that front, because he's talking about deforestation. Okay, the intention is that the forests of the worlds are all accessible at the game start. There's no hidden forests, but can suffer from depletion, in this case deforestation. Deforestation is dependent on a few things. The higher techs you utilize for the base production will increase the chances of resources to be depleted. If it is depleted, the logging camps will be replaced with a clear-cut building, which can still produce lumber, but at a heavily reduced rate. There is also intent of adding a mechanic where this mechanic can be utilized to better represent nature and man-made disasters which have affected resource procurement. Okay, so notice this is this right here must be his addition in terms of a new PM. Why is there a separate building now instead of a modifier? Oh, it's also just a separate building. Logging clear cut. So, okay. Why is there a separate building instead of just a modifier? That's a good question. Well, it's a prototype system that lends itself to that, since it's what we do with gold fields to gold mines. So as gold fields get depleted, you can switch over to mines. A different building is also a clear indication to the player. Yep, a lot of systems in Victoria 3 feel fairly opaque, so this is good. A different building is also a clearer indication to the player of these events, as opposed to the modifier on the building itself, which is less visual. It also makes it's where production methods are available and the profit of calculations are different, so that you can more easily see employment changes. Lumber camps will now have new production methods to manage their extraction, decreasing depletion chances at the cost of throughput, while depleted camps have the ability to enable conservation methods to try and mitigate the losses that have already occurred. Okay, so currently in the game, I find that wood is just something I run out of, but if you take a look, this is the example of PMs that are going to decrease the chances of you deforesting. No management, obviously, is the most. Clear-cut logging, I don't know what clear-cut logging is exactly, so, yeah. But selective logging, I'm guessing they take the the older trees, this sort of stuff, and this would be the most conducive to conservation, or not deforesting. On a personal level, I think it adds to the mindset of the time. This, I think, is the biggest reason for including this, but I think if they include this, I would really like to see them increase the available potentials at the start of the game with wood specifically, because, man, I run out of wood every single game. What do I care about level 2, or actually just make the AI construct more, because, the AI doesn't build enough, so they don't build enough wood, so you can't, import wood from them. It's very frustrating, and you don't have enough, natively. Also, there's areas in Brazil and the Amazon which just should have more wood, I think, instead of just a throughput bonus on the wood that they do have. What do I care about 2 levels of deforestation, their inability to produce? I have 40 plus levels of lumber left. This is the price of progress. Seeing the rate of balance between 2 buildings shows the cost of advancement of progress and of industrialization as you wish to see it. Also allows us to easily measure deforestation and tie that into events and intergroup reactions. Fair. There's plenty of places we can go with this. Conservation movement of the 18th and 19th centuries, tying industrialization with actual ecological effects that will upset IGs. So I think the most interesting part of the game is just generally speaking the interplay between the IGs and the economy. So this adding another layer to that is nuanced and realistic, I think is great. Despite my initial reservations, because I run out of wood every game, and I don't like running out of wood. This is not meant to be a complete feature unto itself, but it means of making more realistic narrative into the game. Perfect. Early industrializers might run afoul of deforestation and poor resource management, and will seek other markets to alleviate this effect. Currently, the way it feels is that other markets just don't build enough. They don't have enough construction, and so they never ramp up enough wood, for example, for you to import really large amounts from other markets. And so this might just be an AI adjustment that would help out a lot, where you just have them build more construction centers. Because currently they just don't build a lot of construction centers. I think it's my biggest complaint about the AI in the game at this juncture, because construction centers are what drives GDP increases. And okay, I don't know how they calculate, but I think that they should. Like sometimes you actually just want to lose money to build more construction, because the construction will dig you out of the hole you're in. Okay. Much like how we have done historically. Can you keep the balance of man versus nature in effect, or blah blah blah? Okay, so that's kind of this is a wax whatever, like historic slash philosophical over it. But yeah, being able to actively reforest these lands potentially makes sense to me. I don't know what the cost of reforestation is going to be, because like there's no, if it's just labor to reforest, then like this might be something that becomes worth it. As like you deplete a lot of forests, it becomes more and more just straight up worth it, and not like a long-term play but an immediate play. Okay, what about whaling, fishing, and mineral resources? So this one's going to be a bit more complex. Here I look to the forestry model, where resources are available but can be depleted due to overutilization, as the fisheries of the world are very much subject to the tragedy of the commons. So the problem with wood is localized, but fish travel through the ocean. So like fish is a bit different in mechanic. The difference is also in tech scales. The effect of fishing is scales not only in depletion but in range. I'm experimenting. Yeah, so this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like the further you can go out, for example, the more you can fish. Also, the PMs will change things, but like when you fish, he's going to talk about it. I'm experimenting with having the actions of neighboring nations exactly affect the resource potentials of its neighbors. Overfishing in Great Britain can cause knockoff effects to the eventual depletion of the fisheries in Iceland and Canada and the US. The scale of these effects are still very much prototype stage. I think you just need to have this massive overhaul in like a fishing system. Like the building has to be fundamentally different, because this is a fundamentally different thing. The fish aren't on the land; they are near the land, where like obviously they're in the water, but it's a different thing. You know, it's not. How should I put this? Well, maybe he'll put it away, and I'll expand on that. Where fishing industries differ is the potential to maybe do aquaculture back home. This is really cool. My research is showing that it's slightly outside of the historical timescale, but technically it's a possibility. Um, Okay, the world started ramping up aquaculture in the 1950s and 1960s, but it was a response to the decrease in fish population. Who's to say in an ahistorical Victorian area that goes hard in fish supplies might need to invest in these technologies decades early? I find in a lot of my plays, I build so many canneries that eventually fish get really, really expensive, and so it's, in order to build the groceries out, I don't know, it's certainly a thing where, like, uh, yeah, like the natural resources just get used up, man. But having a sort of dynamic where you can use like conservation methods that are like less efficient to try and either prolong that, or to gain new resources, or to like have aquaculture. All this seems like it should be reasonable, because this would be the response, right? If the world was starting to get fished out way earlier than it did, the response would be aquaculture, and that was the response. It was just later. So if you're brutally like efficient at fishing out the fish population, then maybe you switch to aquaculture earlier. Okay, or like a mix between aquaculture and extraction that is like dynamic and adjusts, or something like this. I don't know, because you wouldn't switch all to aquaculture, right? But if you switch like 80% of your industry to aquaculture and 20% to regular, then like the native fish population could recover while you're also doing aquaculture, or just stay like at an equilibrium. But it is a problem. It is a commons problem. It's different than deforestation. The deforestation is like a localized problem. Well, in terms of CO2, it's a commons problem, but it's a localized problem. All right. Mineral resources are primarily focused around discovery over the potentials being depleted. At the start of the game, there's a fair chunk of mineral available for exploitation, but most will be hidden and will require discovery and exploitation to be started. Mines will have a chance to discover new resources as they start excavation below. See, I love this idea, because he's going to talk about it in a sec. Blah, 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 blah. For example, here's the example. You cannot gain all levels of coal and whales with just hands and picks. I like that you have to go up the tree in order. It not just increases the output, but it increases the potentials that you could potentially get. That sentence is probably messed up somewhere. But okay. And here's the best change. Finally, Mike surprised us all by not doing anything at all with trains at this time. We're not exactly sure what he's up to, but whatever it is, I think it emphasizes the point in the beginning that there are absolutely no guarantees any of this will make it into game as is. Now or in the future, if any of you have theories what this might be all about, please give us rest of us a clue in the comments below. Here's the changes of Mike. Yeah, the Dinosaurs. I don't know if it's yeah, president of the Rift's Heart. So Rift's Heart is a little bit interesting, and so maybe it's like something to do with the invasion or of dinosaurs on the otherwise very pleasant Victorian, the colonization of the dinosaurs. I don't know, but I was very amused to see these dinos. As far as all these changes like go, I think I like the way the resources extractions have started at the start, with 1.0, but I do think there should be nuance and difference between a lot of them that is not currently there. Like currently, the fisheries operate exactly the same as like the lumber in terms of how you execute it as a player, but fundamentally they're like different. There are different things, like you have a problem of the commons with fisheries because it depletes other people's resources nearby. So in terms of economics, there's an externality that is not borne by you but is borne by other nations, and so you should overproduce fish, for example, but this is not the same case with logging, where you are the penalties being paid are being paid by you in terms of your decreased logging potentials, and not being paid by your neighbors in the case of like their decreased fishing potentials. And so changing this nuance seems good. Also, the battles, like one of the things I find most annoying about battles is that, if you have a ton of generals on the front, it doesn't matter. Just having 3 really good generals and versus having 10 really good generals, the 3 do the exact same thing, kind of. Having 10 will make it tick advancement for you faster, so that's what it does, but they can't all get involved now. They can get involved potentially in multiple states, and this is based on the length of the line, which I also think is really good, because I'm pretty okay with there just being one battle in a little narrow strip of land, but if it's a large, multi-state front, now you can have multiple battles. I was thinking this exact thing during my China run, where I had a front that ran like the entire length of China, and I had a bunch of generals on it, and they only had one general on it. This was during a civil war, and I couldn't, the advancement was super, super, super slow, and I was like just thinking, it was slow enough to have me thinking like, okay, this is kind of silly. I have a bunch of generals on this important front, but it doesn't matter. I'm just going to move generals off this front because they're really not contributing anything because the advancement speed was already fast. It was just like, this is the entire length of China we're talking here, and we're just saying there's only one battle going on at a time. It doesn't even remotely resemble realism, let alone game balance or something like this. I don't know, but excited to see these potential changes. It's been a very nice dev diary, and feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube algo stuff, and have a good one.